Part 1. The Illusion of Morality. We are taught from the moment we can walk to play fair, to be kind, to share, to wait our turn. And while these lessons mold us into cooperative members of society, they also prepare us to lose. Not always, not dramatically, but consistently, subtly over time. Because while you're following the rules, someone else is rewriting them. While you're apologizing for your ambition, someone else is leveraging theirs to rule you. This video is not about morality. It's about power. And power does not care whether you're nice. Power belongs to those who understand the game and are willing to break the rules that were designed to keep them small. Niccolo Machiavelli understood this better than anyone. In The Prince, he didn't write a guide for saints. He wrote a manual for rulers, for those who must navigate a world of deception, betrayal, and ambition. A world where playing fair is often a weakness, not a virtue. And if you feel tension already, good, because this is not a comfortable journey. This is a descent into the darkest truths of human nature. But if you stay with it, you'll emerge with something priceless: clarity. The clarity to see the world as it is, and the clarity to stop being used, and the clarity to act with strategic ruthlessness when the moment demands it. Let's begin with a brutal question. Have you ever been punished for doing the right thing? Think about it. Have you ever told the truth and lost respect? Played fair and got crushed? Showed loyalty and were betrayed? If yes, then you've already met Machiavelli. You just didn't know it. Because his first and most important lesson is this: it is better to be feared than loved, if you cannot be both. On the surface, this sounds cruel. But look deeper. He's not glorifying cruelty. He's revealing a pattern. People respect strength more than sentiment. And in the real world, fear protects you far more than love ever will. The modern world is full of soft lies. Phrases like "good things come to those who wait" or "just be yourself" are repeated like spiritual mantras, while the people who believe them get eaten alive. Why? Because the world is not built on fairness. It's built on leverage, on perception, on advantage. And those who rise to the top often do so not because they're better, but because they're bold enough to play the deeper game. A game that rewards cold clarity over warm ideals.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
Now, Machiavelli never said we should be evil for its own sake. That's a common misunderstanding. What he said is far more dangerous. We must be willing to appear good while doing what is necessary. He wrote, "A prince must be a great pretender and dissembler." In other words, image matters. Appearances can inspire loyalty, trust, and admiration even as you move your pieces behind the scenes. This isn't deception for fun. It's strategy for survival. Because in a world where most people are ruled by emotion, the one who can manage perception rules the board. But let's stop here and ask something terrifying. What if your morality is being used against you? What if the very values you cherish, honesty, fairness, humility, are the same tools being weaponized by those who don't share them? History is full of examples. Leaders who spoke of peace while planning war. CEOs who preached ethics while exploiting workers. Friends who smiled while plotting your downfall. The lesson? Not everyone plays by the rules. And if you assume they do, you are not moral, you are naive. This is where Machiavelli invites us to grow up. He doesn't ask us to become heartless. He asks us to become alert, to stop judging the world by how it should be and start reading it as it is. Because once you do, you gain a skill most people never develop: strategic detachment. The ability to act without emotional impulse, to see 10 moves ahead, to endure temporary discomfort for long-term advantage. And this, more than anything else, separates the powerful from the powerless. Let's be crystal clear: ruthlessness does not mean cruelty. It means clarity of purpose and the willingness to sacrifice comfort, approval, or even morality in the short term to achieve something greater. The samurai had a saying: "Victory is reserved for those who are willing to pay its price." And often, the price is your innocence, your need to be liked, your fantasy that everyone will play fair if you do. That illusion must die if you are to rise. One of Machiavelli's most feared ideas is this: the ends justify the means. Again, misunderstood. He's not saying all means are justified. He's saying that results matter more than intentions. You can have the purest heart and still fail miserably, because the world rewards execution, not sentiment. And if your enemy wins with brutal efficiency while you lose with noble integrity, the outcome is the same. You're still crushed. This is not cynicism. It's realism. And if you can face it, you become dangerous not because you abandon morality, but because you no longer let it blind you. Think about this. How often do you hesitate to act because you're afraid of seeming selfish? How many times have you dimmed your ambition so others wouldn't feel threatened? How often have you tolerated mediocrity in others just to avoid conflict? These are not small sacrifices. These are acts of self-betrayal dressed up as virtue. And every time you do it, you train your subconscious to associate power with guilt. No wonder you feel stuck. You are playing a game where the only way to win is by losing yourself. Machiavelli teaches us that power respects power, not kindness, not talent, not even intelligence. Power bows to those who move with calculated intent, who understand how to bend perception, who know when to flatter, when to deceive, when to retreat, and when to strike. That doesn't mean you must always act ruthlessly, but it means you must have the capacity to. Because the moment people sense you're unwilling to go there, they know they can control you. Let's go even deeper. One of the most psychologically devastating moves you can make is to stop needing approval. When people can no longer control you with praise or guilt, they panic. They don't know what to do with someone who is internally governed. This is why Machiavelli said, "A wise ruler ought never to keep faith when by doing so it would be against his interest." Brutal? Yes, but only if you assume others will keep faith with you. The moment you realize trust must be earned continually, not assumed, you begin to move differently. Sharper, slower, smarter. So what's the takeaway here? Not to become a tyrant, but to become sovereign. To stop outsourcing your power to values that were programmed into you without your permission. To stop pretending that playing fair will protect you in a world that often rewards the opposite. And most importantly, to develop the ruthless clarity to act when action is needed, even if it costs you comfort, reputation, or old identities. This is not about living without conscience. It's about living without illusion. And the greatest illusion of all is that power and goodness always align. They don't. Sometimes they do. Often they don't. And when they don't, you must choose. Not between good and evil, but between naive morality and strategic effectiveness. One will keep you noble. The other will keep you alive. So ask yourself now, really ask, when was the last time you lost because you played too fair? And when will be the moment you stop? Part 2, the art of controlled aggression. If part 1 was about waking up to the illusion of fairness, part 2 is about something even more dangerous: learning how to weaponize your intelligence without losing your soul. Because the world doesn't just respond to knowledge. It responds to decisiveness, to boldness, and most of all, to controlled aggression. Machiavelli didn't admire brute savagery. He admired precision. He respected those who could smile while plotting, charm while conquering, and strike only when the time was perfect. This is not about being reckless. This is about being deliberate, calculating, strategic, and always 2 steps ahead. Controlled aggression means you don't waste your energy in emotional outbursts. You don't fight every battle. You don't seek revenge for every slight. Instead, you listen. You observe. You wait. You let your enemies expose their weaknesses. You let the room underestimate you. And when the moment comes, you strike not with rage, but with surgical precision. This is the art Machiavelli saw in great leaders, the ability to withhold force until it mattered most. The ability to look harmless until power shifted silently in your favor. Let's be clear, this kind of restraint is not weakness. It's discipline. The lion doesn't roar at every mouse, and the powerful don't react to every threat, they respond to opportunity. Machiavelli warned against being too virtuous when it came to mercy and justice. He wrote, "A prince must not have any other object nor any other thought, but war, its institutions, and its discipline." That doesn't mean you live in constant conflict. It means you train your mind like a warrior. You prepare for betrayal, for chaos, for competition, not with paranoia, but with mental readiness. Ask yourself, how much of your life have you spent trying to be the better person? How often have you walked away from confrontation not because it was wise, but because you were afraid? How often have you tolerated disrespect in the name of peace, but ended up resenting yourself later? Machiavelli challenges this entire mindset. He invites us to face a brutal truth. People respect boundaries they fear crossing. If your goodness makes you predictable, you are not good, you are vulnerable. And in a world of predators, vulnerability is currency for the powerful. This is why controlled aggression is a necessary skill. We usually think of aggression as something negative, but that's because we associate it with immaturity, with tantrums, with violence. True aggression, the kind Machiavelli admired, is measured, patient, and targeted. It's the ability to say no without guilt, the ability to make decisions without over-explaining, the ability to cut ties without emotional collapse. Most people are so terrified of being seen as mean that they become mentally weak. But here's the paradox: the more assertive you are, the more respect you gain, and the less resistance you face. Let's look at a real-world example. Think of successful leaders, CEOs, politicians, even cultural icons. The ones who rise to the top are rarely the nicest people in the room. They're the ones who understand the balance between charm and authority, between warmth and force. They know how to influence without begging, how to dominate without shouting. This is what Machiavelli meant when he said, "It is much safer to be feared than loved." He wasn't promoting cruelty. He was promoting psychological leverage. But let's go even deeper. What happens when you finally stop playing fair? You begin to reclaim your inner authority. You stop outsourcing your decisions to people who don't even understand your vision. You stop apologizing for your ambition. You stop making yourself small to protect other people's comfort. And most importantly, you begin to live by design, not default. This is the mental shift that turns a passive thinker into a powerful strategist. Because once you realize that no one is coming to save you, you stop waiting. You start moving. Here's where Machiavelli gets even darker but also more insightful. He believed that human nature is fundamentally self-interested, not evil, just wired for survival and advantage. And if you assume that people will act in your best interest, you will eventually be disappointed or destroyed. But if you assume that people will act in their best interest, you can predict, prepare, and protect yourself. This is not cynicism, it's realism. And realism is the foundation of power. Let's pause and ask something dangerous. What if your desire to be liked is the very thing keeping you weak? This question stings because it reveals a deep emotional addiction. We crave validation. We want to be accepted. We fear rejection. But Machiavelli would tell you that fear is your leash. If people know you need approval, they will withhold it to control you. If they know you fear rejection, they will threaten it to manipulate you. But the moment you no longer depend on it, that's the moment you become untouchable. This is why Machiavelli's lessons are not just political, but psychological warfare. He teaches you how to deprogram your inner need for fairness, affection, and external permission. He teaches you how to stop seeking power from others and start generating it from within. This doesn't mean isolating yourself. It means anchoring yourself so that no praise lifts you too high and no criticism drags you too low. So that you can engage with the world not as a beggar, but as a strategist. Let's not mistake this for heartlessness. True ruthlessness is not about harming others. It's about refusing to harm yourself through self-abandonment. It's about protecting your vision, your energy, your time, your mental clarity. And sometimes that means cutting people off. Sometimes it means saying no and letting others judge you. Sometimes it means walking away from comfort and into calculated conflict. That's not cruelty. That's integrity without apology. Controlled aggression also means understanding timing. Machiavelli said, "The wise man does at once what the fool does finally." This is a brutal truth. Delay is the enemy of power. Every time you hesitate out of fear or overthinking, you give the advantage to someone else. The world doesn't reward the perfect plan. It rewards the decisive one. And if you can move while others are still questioning their feelings, you win not because you're smarter, but because you're faster and bolder. And that leads us to the most powerful Machiavellian move of all, strategic unpredictability. If people can predict your reactions, they can control your narrative. But if you become tactically unpredictable, if you sometimes forgive and sometimes retaliate, sometimes embrace and sometimes withdraw people will fear crossing you. They won't know your next move. They'll hesitate. They'll second guess. And that hesitation is the space where your power grows. So let's bring this home. Machiavelli's darkest power lessons are not about becoming evil. They're about becoming sovereign, about mastering your psychology so deeply that no one can guilt you into weakness or manipulate you into silence. It's about learning to wield power with precision, not emotion. About understanding when to be generous and when to be merciless. And about knowing that in a world that rewards boldness, you cannot afford to be endlessly fair. Ask yourself now, where in your life are you being too soft out of fear? Who are you protecting at the expense of your own power? What decisions are you delaying because you're afraid they won't like you anymore? And what could happen if you finally stopped playing fair? Part 3. The rise of the cold strategist. We've seen the illusions of morality. We've explored the necessity of controlled aggression. Now we arrive at the transformation, the final stage, becoming the cold strategist. This is where Machiavelli's darkest truths crystallize into power. Not blind power, not chaotic power, but surgical, sovereign, psychological power. The kind that doesn't scream, doesn't prove, doesn't beg. It simply moves quietly, decisively, and with devastating effectiveness. This is power rooted not in dominance, but in depth. The cold strategist doesn't need to win every battle. He knows that most battles are distractions. He knows that attention is currency and drama is taxation. So he avoids noise. He doesn't react to every insult, every slight, every provocation. He lets his enemies burn their energy trying to trigger him. And while they waste their fire, he studies. He plans. He builds. This is the essence of what Machiavelli admired, restraint with intent. The ability to delay gratification, to sit in discomfort, to allow misunderstanding if it serves a greater end. One of the greatest Machiavellian moves is the art of withholding reactions. When people can't read you, they can't control you. When they can't trigger you, they begin to fear you. And when they fear you not from abuse, but from uncertainty, you hold the psychological high ground. Machiavelli wrote, "Everyone sees what you appear to be. Few experience what you really are." The strategist uses this to his advantage. He crafts a surface that invites trust, while protecting a core that remains impenetrable. He is charming, but never fully known. Approachable, but never fully available. This balance is not accidental, it's engineered. It's not enough to think strategically. You must become strategy. This means your mind must evolve beyond emotion-based decision-making. You must stop asking, "What will they think of me?" and start asking, "What does this move achieve long-term?" You must train your emotions to serve your goals, not sabotage them. Most people fail here. They let their wounds drive their choices. They seek validation instead of results. But the cold strategist does not move from pain or pride. He moves from clarity. And this is not easy. It requires a profound inner shift. You must become immune to flattery, immune to guilt, immune to the seductive pull of comfort. Machiavelli knew that the greatest enemy of power is emotional dependence. If you need praise to feel valuable, if you need agreement to feel safe, If you need peace to function, you're not free. You're domesticated, and the world will leash you with your own emotional cravings. But when you detach, when you source your identity from purpose, not approval, you become unleashable. Let's go deeper. The cold strategist understands that not all ruthlessness is external. Sometimes the most important ruthlessness is internal. You must be willing to destroy your old self. The version of you that needed to be liked, the version that over-explained, that apologized for existing, that begged for permission, that played fair hoping the world would return the favor. That version must die, and its death will be painful. But it will make room for something far more powerful to emerge, a self that is self-authored. This inner death and rebirth is what separates the Machiavellian from the moralist. The moralist lives in ideals. He waits for the world to align with his values. He suffers when it doesn't, but the Machiavellian lives in reality. He doesn't wait, he adjusts. He bends, adapts, pivots. He understands that power is not found in control, but in response. And his response is always rooted in awareness, not reaction. But here's the paradox. The colder you become, the more freedom you gain to act with compassion. Because you're not acting from fear. You're not giving to be liked. You're not helping to avoid guilt. You're choosing. And that choice, because it's sovereign, holds more power than any forced kindness ever could. Machiavelli's wisdom is often misunderstood because people assume ruthlessness must come at the cost of ethics. But true ruthlessness is not the absence of ethics, it's the mastery of them. The ability to use them as tools, not chains. Now let's talk about power dynamics. In every interaction, there is leverage. Even in love, even in friendship, even in family. Most people pretend that equality governs relationships. But Machiavelli would say, power is always being exchanged. The only question is, are you aware of it or being used by it? The cold strategist is always aware. He knows when he's giving too much, when he's being emotionally extorted, when someone is cloaking manipulation in the costume of love. And he adjusts accordingly, not with drama, but with precision. This leads us to one of the most powerful moves in the Machiavellian playbook, strategic silence. When you say less, you give less information. When you're silent, others reveal themselves. They fill the void with their assumptions, their fears, their projections, and in that gap, the strategist listens. He watches. He gathers data, and when he speaks with impact. This is why Machiavelli warned against impulsive speech. He knew that words are weapons and should be used sparingly. Not because you're afraid to speak, but because you understand the cost of speaking without purpose. Ask yourself, how often do you talk just to be heard? How often do you reveal your plans to people who haven't earned your trust? How often do you try to prove your worth instead of silently building it? These are not small questions. They reveal the architecture of your mind. And if you're truly ready to stop playing fair, this architecture must be redesigned. From validation, seeking to outcome seeking. From emotional leakage to emotional discipline. Let's now examine one of Machiavelli's most confronting ideas. Men are ungrateful, fickle, false, cowardly, covetous. Is it pessimistic? Maybe. But what if instead it's liberating? What if expecting nobility from everyone is what makes you vulnerable? What if accepting the flaws of human nature allows you to move through life with sharper choices and less disappointment? What if, by embracing the darkness of others, you finally stop being surprised and start being prepared? This is not about becoming paranoid. It's about becoming aware. When you accept that betrayal exists, you stop being shocked by it. When you accept that loyalty is rare, you stop depending on it. And when you accept that everyone is playing their own game, you stop taking things personally. That's what makes you untouchable. Not armor, but understanding. And here's the final transformation. The cold strategist is not cold because he lacks emotion. He's cold because he masters it. Because he knows that real strength is not in domination, but in direction. He doesn't need to destroy others to win. He just needs to stop destroying himself with softness that was never reciprocated. And once he stops that, he becomes unstoppable, not because he's cruel, but because he's clear. So now we ask the ultimate question: are you ready to stop living in reaction and start living in strategy? Are you ready to stop playing fair in a game that was never fair to begin with? Are you ready to stop waiting for permission, for approval, for the right moment, and start creating outcomes with calculated intent? This is not a game of luck. It's a game of leverage. And leverage belongs to those who are willing to be misunderstood, disliked, and even feared if it means they stay loyal to their vision. Machiavelli didn't write for the masses. He wrote for the few who were ready to rise, not through violence, not through cruelty, but through unshakable clarity. And that clarity is now yours. So go. Stop playing fair. Be ruthless, and rule not with force, but with formidable presence.